You would think I'm Italian, but I'm not. We're bringing in some manufacturers to have test drives. Whereas, okay, for a $5 donation, you could take a spin in their new car. But I mean, it's great for the U.S. For someone like me that's a massive fan. But the problem is you're priced out of it. God, I hope these morons, these team principals in F1 let Andretti have a team. In the grand scheme of things, it might reduce their revenue per team a little bit, but it's not like it's going to cut it in half.
If everyone else was that dedicated to their clients, the world would be a lot more competitive. So,
and they basically have the same ethics that I do, and we do everything correctly.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your unusual co-host, F1 Blag, and this time I didn't make a mistake on the intro. But what an episode we have ahead of us today. We have a chap that tells me that with 20 plus years of experience in the automotive market, he can source and sell the specific Ferrari or Porsche that I desire. All I need to do is work on my money. But while we do that, why don't I introduce William Ross? William, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is fantastic.
No, it's lovely to have you. We're a motorsport podcast, but we talk to people from Formula One, we talk to people from IndyCar and so on. What we're really into, though, is expanding our reach, really talking to people who are in the motor trade and really understanding the different aspects. And listen, the automotive market is really what motorsport's all about. Really, that is marketing for what you do, which is high performance vehicles and for the elite to be able to buy them. Could you tell our listeners who you are and what you get up to?
Again, obviously my name's William Ross. I live in the States. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Ohio. I've been at this for a very long time, as you stated, 20 plus years. So that kind of dates me. It's, probably been maybe a tad longer than that because, but, I raced when I was younger, raced everything with 2 wheels, 4 wheels, never with 3, but, those ones on there. So, grew up doing that. And then I got married and that, so I had to sell all my race cars and stuff to buy a house. So, but, I just been a long time because it's something I'm passionate about, and I'm obviously a huge motorsports fan, huge, massive F1 fan. And you're right with the fact is how, everything kind of plays off one another, not saying people want to, have their inner incentive, playing out on their street car, but, you got that trickle down effect with technology and that into the road cars from the F1 cars and racing cars. So, and it's awesome to see what's, happening, like with Le Mans and everything like that, what they're doing with the new classes and kind of with IMSA working together and creating these, classes that obviously represent more indicative of, your street cars. So it's great to see. But yeah, just, something I'm passionate about, I love doing. It's one of those things where, you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And it's something I just really enjoy doing.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you raced when you were younger, before you had to sell up and buy the family home. When did you get into motorsport? What's your first memory of motorsport?
Let's see, I was 6 years old and I had a Honda Trail 70 and I started racing that.
Wow, that's quite specific.
Yeah, well, your first motorcycle, everything kind of sticks with you. So, I started that because it was cheap. My dad, I don't think my mom really wanted me to buy it for me, but he bought it for me and, just kind of started from there. And, I raced, motocross for a while. Then we got in, started racing karts. Then I went in some, single seater open wheel stuff, then into some stuff with SCCA Pro stuff. I did the Skip Barber Pro Series for a couple of years. Then I got into my own cars and, working on them and, racing it. But again, then, life happens and, certain things come before that. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's just something it's one of those things that I think you're almost born with it in your blood almost. It's like just something that's in you because, ever since I could almost walk and ride a bicycle, it was about jumping the bike and stuff, pretending I was Evil Knievel and that kind of stuff. And you just want to go faster. So hence then you get someone with a motor in it and you go faster and, jump farther and higher. So it's just kind of something, it's always been in me. It's just a passion. It's kind of odd. And usually I think that's pretty common amongst everybody. All of us that have this passion for cars, motorcycles, racing, it's just something you're born with. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's just something that we all have that common ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few things in common that the people on our podcast have. There's a drive, there's a kind of, following the passion, but that passion for going quickly, for racing and for cars is definitely something that cuts across. It just so that our listeners can picture you. You talked about the Skip Barber series. Where's that based? Is that based down in Florida, or am I making that up? Where did you sort of get into it?
Now you got to remember this was back in the early 90s. So this was some time ago. And this is when they were affiliated with Dodge. I actually kind of, they would have, the series was all over, they'd have, regional stuff, but then their national stuff. So I did a lot here in the Midwest, like Ohio, Indiana, and those areas and Michigan. And then I'd actually, in the winter, I would go down and do it down in Florida. So I kind of go year round, so to speak, and be in that area. So that's what was nice with them is, you had the opportunity, no matter what time of the year or where you're from, to be able to, jump into the series and race, and you could either just do a race here, a race there, or you could do the whole series. It's just depending on how much money you had. I did it to the things where I had the money, or then I just put it on my charge card and paid it off later. And, you do what you got to do to race, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, is there something about, like, obviously I know about Detroit being Motor City, but is there something about the Midwest? We've had so many guests who seem to be from that area that are in motorsport, in the sort of automotive industry. Is that the hub in America, just for our sort of European listeners?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I guess you look at, because obviously the whole, the motor industry, and Henry Ford, everything, all the other, to be in Detroit. But I mean, if you look at the history of the car around in the United States and, becoming what it is, there were car manufacturers all over the country, and actually where I'm at in Cleveland, Ohio area, there were quite a few, but, Detroit became the heartbeat of it just because that's where they all survived, I guess, so to speak, after all, condensing down, one's going out of business. But, you have Indianapolis, that's right there kind of in this region, it's like 5 hours from me by car. You got the Indy 500. So, you have a lot of race teams based there. But, what also I think drives it is with Detroit, with proximity where is at, all the secondary plants that the manufacturers have are pretty much a lot in this region, like in the Ohio area, down in Indiana, so a lot of people grew up with their either grandfather, their father or mother, whoever, working for Ford, GM, or Chrysler. So you had these people that were, born and raised in the car industry. So it's kind of in their blood, having cars around them. And, I think that kind of drove it a lot. Now, you get out to California, now that's kind of where the hot rodding scene started, and they had all the guys out there building these fantastic cars, it's what they had access to. So they kind of took it to a different level. And obviously there wasn't as much car industry out there as say in the Midwest, but, they kind of had a huge influence, on, the car industry itself, and just with what they would build and the hot rods, and going faster. But, being proximity wise, yeah, I mean, I could say, as the saying is, the heartbeat of America's areas, just, a lot of people grew up with family that worked for an auto manufacturer. So it's hence, you just kind of have it in you because that's what you always talked about. Dad came home, mom came home from work, and be it they worked on the assembly line, doing whatever, or they were an executive, and bringing home the cool cars, and stuff like that. So I think that played a huge influence on this region producing and having so many car people in it.
No, for sure. And like a big friend of the show is Taylor Ferns, who is, I think, the most successful female driver in the USAC Silver Crown. She's going all in this year, running
Hmm.
all that series, and we wish her every luck. But yeah, she's from a similar area. The thing that I find funny whenever I talk to people from the US is they say, you just said, I'm 5 hours drive from Indianapolis. For us in the UK, if you drive in any direction for 5 hours, you're either in Scotland, in Cornwall, or in the ocean. There's no, you can't drive that far. So, yeah, it
Yeah,
just shows the scale.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, but no, see, you guys have, like I was talking with Georgie, before we got on, and
Mm,
where she's at over in Sri Lanka, I mean, obviously it'd be a long drive, but I mean, you guys drive 5, 10 hours, you're in a different country, or you're in the ocean, or
yeah,
you're up in
yeah.
Scotland, what have you. We just go, we're in a different state, but we're lucky. And the fact is, we don't have for you guys because of Brexit and everything. Now with your border crossings, it's a pain in the what. Us, we don't have to worry about it. You just see a sign that says, "Hey, welcome to so and so. This is where you're at." You just keep on driving. Um, yeah, we do have that luxury, being places like driving down to Daytona, or even if you wanted to drive out to California, which I've done a few
Mm.
times. It's great where we live at, and there's different ways you can go and different scenery, and so yeah, we do have that luxury, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, if there hasn't been enough telling me in my life that I need to go to the US and do a road trip, I feel like it's this conversation. So,
Oh,
if people hear me, that I'll be out there.
well, we're working on. I don't know how much you looked into my background, but like currently right now, one of
Mm,
the main things I'm working on is with a project we have, Feuerbach Porsche. Um,
mm,
we're actually working with Ferry Porsche's grandson, Chris Reitz, who's a designer of the car. We're taking a 997 series GT3, and we're basically making an RSR for the street. But
wow.
there's going to be completely bespoke. But we actually took on this other entity that has he already built it, and we haven't announced it yet, so I really can't get into too much of it. But we're going to actually take the car. Our plan is back down in September to take it hopefully from the Red Ball Garage in New York City. I don't know how familiar with the Cannonball Run, but that's
Mm,
where it always originates at, is the Red Ball Garage in New York City, and then take it out, go all the way out to California for Pebble Beach, and then have the car showcased out there. But we're trying to do is assemble, a group of like 20, 25 guys in their cars, and hey, whoever wants to ride with them, and not to say race across the country, but take a good couple of weeks and drive 10, 12 hours a day, stop somewhere nice, have some good food, and relax, and then get up next day and drive some more. Just take an interesting route across the country.
mm.
So if that comes about, you can come over for that. You can be a co-driver.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if my driving license in the UK qualifies me to drive in the US, but that sounds amazing. So you're working
Just
with
don't
the
get pulled
go
over.
on.
You wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll do my best. So you're working with the grandson of the founder of, or one of the founders of Porsche, and tell us
Correct.
more about the work you're doing with Porsche. I don't want to pronounce the word because I'll get it wrong. Is it Feuerbach Porsche? How do you
Feur,
pronounce it?
Feur, Feuerbach.
Feuerbach. Okay.
Feuerbach, yeah, which is the street that the first actual assembly place of Porsche started. That's how we have the name. That was the name of the
Mm,
street it actually started on. Um, so, but on the Porsche side, so that's kind of how I got involved in this project, because of what I do on the Porsche side of things, and being able to have the clientele that can, I guess, purchase these kind of cars at what price point they're going to be at. So that's how I kind of got involved with that. I'm a massive fan of Porsche and Ferrari, and they're two totally different, I guess, views of how they go about their businesses and how they build cars. But I love the German, just the engineering, just the precision
mm.
of those cars and how they're built, and just, they're almost basically bulletproof. The 911's been around for almost 75 years this year, basically. No, well, I'm sorry, not 75 years. Porsche's been around 75 years, but the 911's been around since, was it 64? I think it was 67 the first year. I'm trying to remember exactly off the top of my head. But the basic design hasn't changed. They've stretched it, widened it, lowered it a little bit, and everything there. But they nailed that package right out of the gate. That you really don't need to fiddle with it. But the engineering that goes into those cars and just how they drive and how they handle. I mean, it's so precise. I mean, there's nothing else like it. You drive that car, and especially with the engine hanging out the rear, drive it fast, you got to have the right technique. You can't drive it like a regular mid-engine car or front-engine car because, you try and do that car is just going to spin on you. So you got to have the right technique driving those cars, especially the older ones. If you talk about, especially like an old 930 turbo, it's pretty much trail braking and halfway at the apex, just floor it. That car will get you around the corner. But it's just God, they're just so mechanically sound. I mean, it's just, you have to appreciate what they do with their cars and how they build them. If you don't like the way they look, so be it, but you have to have respect for the way those cars are built.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you mentioned the name of the company is where Porsche started up. So I'm just seeing, are they based in Stuttgart? And where's Mercedes headquarters? Isn't that Stuttgart as well? Maybe I'm getting confused. I don't know.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll make it easy. They're in Germany too.
Germany's a big place. It doesn't look big to you on a map, but I can assure you it's bigger than the UK. So
yeah, well, I want to say I believe they are, because that's kind of how one of my favorite all-time cars is the E500 that Porsche and Mercedes collaborated on, and that Porsche basically did all the drivetrain, the engine, everything on suspension. Mercedes supplied the rolling chassis pretty much. And I know that for proximity wise kind of helped facilitate that partnership, but it kind of helped both of them. It helped Porsche obviously stay open, but it also kind of gave Mercedes that sporting aspect of it to it. And I don't want to say not a precursor to your AMG type cars, but it kind of was down the same line of it. So I know they're relatively close to each other because of that car. That's how I'm kind of familiar with the fact is how close they are.
Well, you mentioned Ferrari, and in a minute I'm going to ask you to tell us your dream garage. Like, what 3 cars you'd have in it, and you can only pick 3. But before we do that, you sort of were talking about the Porsche and saying, well, it's a bit different to the Ferrari or the way it's built. You also work in sort of on Ferrari sales as well. Tell us about the Ferrari. Tell us about what makes you passionate about Ferrari and what the differences are, I suppose, with Ferrari.
I mean, you would think I'm Italian, but I'm not. But I don't know. It's just the passion. And how Ferrari goes about building their car, especially back in the Enzo era stuff. And I always love the quotes from Enzo in regards to, all his comments he made in regards to, hey, the chassis and the wheels are just a vehicle for my engines, and those kind of quotes that he always made back in the day. And as you say, I know what the other one was is people that need to make a car that handles just don't have know how to build a fast enough engine. It's just the passion behind it and what goes into it. You can really see. Like with Porsche, it's not so much, the exterior, the aesthetics of the car. It's more about the underpinnings of the car, the mechanical. And Ferrari, obviously, the underpinnings, the mechanical is fantastic too. And they've come a very, very long way back from their earlier days. But, they're so much into the styling, the aesthetics of the car, and, make something that's, the person that's driving it makes them feel unique in that aspect that they're out there. They have this gorgeous, Italian thoroughbred of a car, and just get your heart pumping. Those are that's the car that, if it's in your garage, you go out, you'll take a lawn chair or a chair and go out in your garage and just stare at it, sit in a chair and just stare at it, or, you'll spend a day, if it's raining out, you don't want to drive because it's wet. You don't want to get it dirty, but you'll go out there for 3-4 hours and polish it, even though you polish it the day before. It's those things. It's just, you have this connection and passion for the car. It just really stirs your soul, having one and driving one. It's something I know I'm lucky that I've had the opportunity to drive many different cars across many different eras. But I highly always recommend to people, and And if I'm ever afforded that opportunity for someone that, hey, I have this car today, you want to drive it so you can see what it's like, I always, offer it up and let someone try it because I want someone else to experience it. It's just, I mean, you get in that driver's seat and, what you feel through your ass, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Pardon the
No, no,
verbiage,
no.
but I mean, it's just, you feel it coming through. It's just, it just gets your blood going. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've just found some quotes from Enzo. As you were saying, aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines,
Yeah,
is one.
exactly.
And he says, I don't sell cars, I sell engines. The cars I
Yep.
throw in for free, since
Yep.
something has to hold the engines in. I mean, yeah, what a character. That's probably
Yeah.
the
I
best
mean,
quote I've heard in a while.
yeah. I mean, the stuff that he made was fantastic. And it was funny. I mean, and for a while, hey, he was right. I mean, he had the fastest cars, the best cars. And here's what Killen's fact is, you think he, build these beautiful engines and drivetrains, and then the body was just some block. It was all square and everything like that. No, I mean, those cars from the 50s and 60s are some of the most beautiful cars ever built. I mean, they're just absolutely just breathtaking cars. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he manufactured and what those guys were able to produce out of. I mean, you go back and look what that factory was. I mean, you're talking, everything by hand. I mean, making all these cars it's just phenomenal what they were able to do back in the day. And not just Ferrari, though. I mean, all of them, Aston Martin, Jaguar, I mean, you look at the cars they were making back then and how they went about doing it. It was just unbelievable what they produced.
No, absolutely. Well, look, the moment has arrived. You can only pick 3 cars that have ever been made. But which 3 would you have in your garage? Over to you.
Do I have a budget?
No budget. Let's make it crazy. No budget.
Well, obviously, right off the bat, you're going to have a 250 GTO. I'd have a 250 GTO, a 288 GTO, and an F40.
Wow. Okay. I'm now following behind you. I mean, look, that 250 GTO is a beauty of a thing.
Well,
What
what's
we'll have to
gorgeous
do,
about,
go on, yeah.
what's great with those cars. I mean, they only got about 300 horsepower. I mean, they're not going to overwhelm you or anything like that. But I mean, it's a car that you could, they drove to the track, raced, and drove home. It was, it's not, the most unyielding car. I mean, but you could comfortably drive that, 10, 12 hours, be all right with it, take a few breaks in here. But I mean, it was a grand touring car, but it was a race car, and you could drive it on the street. 288, it's almost basically, kind of say he's got a lot more creature comforts, and it's actually a very comfortable car to drive. The F40 is just, just balls out fun.
The F40 was, so I recall that they kind of used some of the F1 technology from about 1990, 1989 in a car. Is that the F40 they did that with? I'm trying to think.
That was that you're getting more into the F50 that they took like
okay.
the job engine from and basically dropped it into for the road car. I mean, obviously they detuned it, but the F50 was more the ones why they did it. Now, the 288 and the F40 basically have the same engine. And that engine was derived for the Group B rally era because Ferrari was going to go Group B racing, but then they canceled it because of obviously too much horsepower and people getting killed. But they were so far in the development of it, they needed to do something. So hence, they created the road car. From that, here went to 288, and then as the swan song for Enzo, the F40 was the last one he signed off on. They had this great twin turbo V8. Say let's just they tweaked it a little bit, whatnot, and dumped it in that and created this just memorable body. I mean, it's lightweight, bare bones. I mean, there's nothing to it, but you don't need anything in it. You just need the steering wheel, the pedals, and the seat because you got that gorgeous engine behind you just singing a symphony as you go through the gears.
Yeah, and look, I can tell you're a salesman because if I had the money, I'd be giving it to you right now. But yeah, the F40, not to age myself too much, I remember as a child, I had a small replica. Like that is my childhood. Looking at that design, just it's very 80s or 90s, but it's beautiful.
Oh yeah, I mean that's it's a car. I want to say it'll never go out of style, but it was designed so well. I mean it's a layman person going that has no idea about cars or something, they would think it's something brand new. You know, it's kind of one of those type of designs. You know, it's just timeless, and you know, it just set the bar so high for, you know, in this today's terms, because of horsepower and that, you know, it's not a hypercar, but I mean, it kind of kicked things off. I mean, you know, you had your other cars going on at that era. You know, you had your 959s, your XJ220s, your XJR, you know, XJR 15, you know, those cars, you know, back in those days too. But it kind of set the bar in regards to creating this whole new echelon of car and category. And you know, it's kind of one of the things I say, you know, for the longest time, Ferrari was the, you know, class leading car. You know, Ferrari, I mean, that era, and, you know, not so much the 288, because everyone always says that that's kind of a derivative of the 328, just, you know, fender flares and whatnot, bigger motor. But, you know, the F40 basically came out creating that category for a hypercar. I mean, you know, obviously power wise and everything like this day and age is, you know, it's not even close, but you know, it created that genre and that category for just something utterly outrageous for the street.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're having three Ferraris, or could you, like, let's be fair to your Porsche friends or sort of other marks. You any car in the world, you'd still go with the three Ferraris. You're sitting in your lawn chair, staring at them, listening to the symphony, or would you put another brand, another manufacturer in there?
Well, like I said, you know, the E500 is one of my all-time favorite cars. I mean, it's just, you know, it's a sleeper. It's a four-door sedan. It's got
Mm.
322 horsepower, you know, so it's kind of, you know, I know it's a little wider, fender flares, everything like that. I mean, you'd have to go with a GT3. I mean, that's just, you know, your ultimate track, you know, daily driver car. One of those would be fantastic. You know, big fan of those, obviously. Um, you know, I'm being an American, you know, I'm a Ford person. I got a Ford truck, but you know, I love the Ford GT. You know, the second generation and the new third generation, those are fantastic. You know, it's, you know, you'd want to have your three, but you'd almost would have to do is you'd be circulating ones in and out just because there's so many. Or hey, if you're lucky enough, hey, you have a big garage and you just have 40, 50 cars. You know, because each one, you know, gives you your own driving experience. Yeah, it's, you know, I was watching one the other day, and you know, it took them forever to come out with you know, the Lexus LFA. That V10 that's in that car is just, I mean, that thing sounds phenomenal. I mean, that's just things, you know, rev that thing up to almost, was 11,000 RPM, I think it goes. You know, it's such a glorious sound. You know, that's what's great about internal combustion engines, you know, is every car you get into, it's going to behave differently, and how the power is put down and how it sounds and just how it goes about its business. You get an electric car, if you put a blindfold on, you would think you're in the same exact car, every car you got in, except maybe for the horsepower aspect of it. You know, that's what we're losing with these electric cars. I mean, I'm not against them, but you put a blindfold on, each drivetrain, everything, it reacts the same, power's the same, you know, they're phenomenal how, you know, with the acceleration and the power they have, but there's no soul to them. There's no character. And that's what you get out of an engine with the pistons going. You know, it's just each car is its own thing. And, you know, I'm just a huge car person all around. You know, I'm a big fan of all makes and models. You know, I love, you know, Jag and Astons back from the day. I mean, they're gorgeous. You know, the E-Type, you know, you know, I know people say, oh, Enzo said that's the most beautiful car ever built. That's kind of a stretch. He did make the comment that it was a beautiful car, but I don't, from my knowledge, those exact words never came out of his mouth. But I just, some people debate that, but hey, but you know, you have just the way these cars, you know, those cars just have that power to them. I mean, it's just, I mean, I love the older stuff too. I mean, if I had to go with the older cars, obviously, I mean, I'd have an E-Type, definitely have an E-Type. You know, and do a 275 GTB 4 cam would be another one that I'd have. I mean, obviously that's a Ferrari. I love to have an Outlaw 356. That would be fantastic. Stuff a big motor in an old 356. An old Speedster would be fun. That'd be a great car to, you know, just go around some real tight roads and have some fun with, you know, no top. You know, there's so many different cars out there that have been built that you can just enjoy and have fun with. And, you know, and I always have this saying to people because, you know, you can have these cars that got, 1,000 horsepower, 2,000 horsepower now with these electric cars. It's like, well, look, where are you going to use all that? My saying always is, it's always funner to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow. You're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of it, ringing that motor out, taking a 90 horsepower 356 and just ringing it and just revving the piss out of it and just having some fun. Whereas you got some cars got 900 horsepower, you can barely use a quarter of it. Yeah, they're great, but I think the enjoyment's more than really taking a car and just ringing it and just having some fun.
No, absolutely. As a man, a very manly man, of course, but that's probably never owned a car with more than 150 horsepower. I have to agree, although I have no comparator to compare with. You had my heart at E-Type, so at least you're representing the British or formerly British brands with the Jaguar. So no, thank you. A quick question for you, because go on, please.
My grandmother came over from England when she was 13, so I have British blood in me, so hence that.
Okay. Do you know where in the UK she came from?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's up by Manchester. I think it was up by Manchester. I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say it was up north there from that region. I can't remember exactly. And I still have family over there. Not many. They're getting up there in age, but I know I still have some family over there.
No, brilliant. Well, look, you'll always have some affiliation with us, and we love it. You're a busy guy, because what I'm known for among our listeners is just doing a quick check of the LinkedIn before we have the interview, and you probably have the most job titles that I've ever heard. So and that's incredible. Tell us about Rock and Revs. What's that?
Well, I do have a job. I'm a very passionate person about animals and children and helping them in any way. I believe you guys have Make-A-Wish over there, but I'm a wish granter for Make-A-Wish, and then I volunteered a couple animal shelters, and I'm on the board of directors on one of them. But Rock and Revs was kind of, here in Cleveland, Ohio, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's here. So, they say, the birthplace of rock and roll. And the only reason they say that is because this, what's his name, the DJ coined the phrase rock and roll here in Cleveland. So that's kind of how they say Cleveland's a home of rock and roll. So they built the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here. But if you do a Google aerial view of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you'll see it's right up on the lakefront. It's a beautiful area. The Cleveland Browns football team stadium's right there. We have the Great Lakes Science Center, and there's gorgeous park that's up north. There's a marina. And, it just popped in my head one day. I go to all these events throughout the year, and I'm like, why is there not one here in Cleveland? We have the perfect area for it. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we got the Science Center, the stadium's all there. We have all this perfect spot for it. And the name just popped in my head. And so one day, I just made a call up to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I said, hey, I have this idea, combining cars and music, because a lot of times cars and music and cars kind of influence one another. And, there's so many big names, that are into cars. I mean, big ones like, would be Nick Mason. So it's like, what do you think? Let's have an event. And they're like, yes, it's fantastic. I called the city. They were like, love it. And Science Center, love it. Called the Brown, love it. So I'm like, well, I guess I got to do this now. So we just kind of put the event together to raise money for those charities. Obviously Make-A-Wish, the Cleveland Clinic is one of the major hospitals that are, based here in Cleveland, but they got hospitals around the world. And the animal shelters that I would do some work for, I volunteer for, to help raise money for them and kind of, bring some more attention to them. So, it just started putting everything together, and it just kind of, everyone was on board. It was one of those things where anyone you talk to about it and, hey, want to participate? Yes. Everyone was on board. And so I don't want to say I got stuck. Hey, I got to do it, but it's going to be fun, but that's how it came about. It's just, having a showcase event here for Cleveland, because there's really nothing like it within like a couple, 2, 3, 4 hours of Cleveland that's like it anywhere else around here. So it's like, and this is a huge motor car city, and Ford's got, multiple plants here. GM's got a plant here, and there were back in the, early part of the 19th, 20th century, there was a lot of car manufacturers that were here. Fortunately, they went out of business, but, it was a big car centric city. And so it just made sense. So we're like, hey, let's put something together.
Fantastic. And when you talk about Make-A-Wish, are you allowing people to drive particular cars, or is it just more of a showcase of the cars, bringing the music together? What are the events like?
Well, what we're doing for this one, because my goal, my vision was for it, I didn't want to have it like your typical concourse level event where it's just cars parked, people walked around, looked at the cars and go, oh, pretty. I wanted it to be more interactive. So that's why, having the music aspect of it, we wanted to have bands playing. We're bringing in some manufacturers to have test drives. Whereas, okay, for a $5 donation, you could take a spin in their new car, and more than likely be electric. We brought in this one outfit that does a lot of, fundraising for charities through, they have these electric go-karts they bring in. They have a track and, you set times and that kind of stuff. With the Science Center, we're trying to do something with a nod to the, beginning of the car with either we want to have, but we're still trying to work out the bugs with it, is for a couple $100, you can learn how to drive a Model T. And it sounds like you never had the opportunity, but I highly suggest if you get the opportunity, try and go learn how to drive a Model T. It's a lot of fun. I mean, you're not going to go fast at all, but it's a blast figuring out because your gas pedal's in the center and the throttle's on the steering wheel. And it's really neat learning how to drive one. It's a totally different experience. You're so involved with the car, but we want to have, either more than likely it's going to be, hey, for a couple bucks, go for a drive, someone will take you for a drive in an old Model T or some old cars. We just kind of want to have more activities going on and something that's more, people get more involved. Like I said, instead of just walking around looking at cars. I mean, obviously we'll have fantastic vehicles out on the field, to look at and, take photos of, but we want to have other things that, keep people, entertained and, wanting to do these things and participate. And obviously it helps raise more money for these causes.
No, absolutely. And speaking of kind of causes and I suppose creating a huge focus in one particular area, hard segue, Formula One started perhaps the millennium with no US Grand Prix. It managed to move to Austin. It's picked up a race in Miami. And this year, we're going to go to Las Vegas. I don't know how many miles or hours drive that is from where you are, probably a long way. But what do you make of the growth of F1 in the US? Does it feel like it's growing? Or, from our perspective, it does. We've got a lot of races to watch late in the afternoon from Europe. But is it growing? How does it feel from where you are?
Well, here's I guess my worry is in 5 to 10 years, the only race that might be still here is the one in Austin. You hate to say it, I think the novelty might wear off. Obviously the Drives to Survive series has played a huge role in the growth, in Formula One, viewership and attendance here in the United States. That's played a big role, and Drive to Survive, I think they're only maybe doing one more season. I think that's it they're doing, and that's it. I mean, they might do two more, but from what I understand, it's only one more. But I mean, it's great for the U.S., for someone like me that's a massive fan. But the problem is you're priced out of it. Austin's not bad. You can still go to Austin for a decent ticket price, see what, watch race stuff. But for the Miami and especially the Vegas races, the ticket prices are obscene. And, you're pricing out the true fan. It's the people you have attending those events are more of going there to say, to be like, look at me, I'm here, and just go around and, shoot for Instagram and, do that kind of stuff and do TikTok videos and try and get clicks. It's not so much about knowing, who's racing, what's the difference in the cars and, what the strategies is and really, the true fan. And my biggest concern is in 5 to 10 years, that novelty will wear off and those races will go by the wayside and we'll still have Austin at least. But, me personally, I think they should have went back to Long Beach. I think that would have been a lot better. obviously, the Las Vegas Strip, you have that glamour of it and everything like that, the casinos and all that jazz. You have the entertainment value of it. I can see it, but it just, I don't know. I would have preferred they would have went back to Long Beach. I know a pipe dream would have been going back to Watson's Glen, but they wouldn't even pass the FIA stuff for the track. But going back to the true stuff, true road courses or that true street course where that history was, like in Long Beach, it's unfortunate, but it's great for the sport. But I just hope that they can maintain it.
Yeah, it's a really, you've just triggered my thinking. The way you've described that, it's almost like Liberty Media, who are the commercial rights holder, they're not necessarily thinking about growth in the sort of intellectual sense of why don't we get fans engaged and build the fan base. It sounds like they're thinking about they have a property, let's maximize the revenue from that property in this market, which we haven't, the sport typically hasn't been in. So that's really interesting when you contrast that to IndyCar, where, I think, is it Iowa? You've got 2 races, 4 like mega concerts from sort of world-renowned rock stars,
Yep.
and it's all under about $300.
Yep.
I don't know if do you watch IndyCar, or what series do you tend to watch?
Oh, I love IndyCar. I watch, my favorites is F1, IndyCar, and IMSA, and the WEC and stuff like that. So I mean, those are my ones that I watch. I'll have in the background sometimes. I might have NASCAR on, but I really won't watch it. It's just I want to hear the engines. But those are the ones I watch. And the other big thing I watch is Supercross, motocross. I watch that because I'm a big motorcycle person too. But IndyCar does a phenomenal job. I mean, especially for having something that's most bang for your buck. Like you said, they have the races, they have the concerts, they have those other things going on, to bring value to this ticket that you're spending. Could be a few $100s, could be $80, but it's so worth it because there's so much, I want to say, downtime between practice and then the race itself. I mean, if you think about the races, hour and a half, 2 hours long, depending on the length, it could be up to 3 hours, 3.5, like the Indy 500, stuff like that. But having these other activities, especially making them, I would say, interactive, having the concert, it's like you have this, noise, motion going on, they have so many other things that they do. They really package it well, and they do a phenomenal job of it. And I think IndyCars, it's on its way up. It's kind of, I want to say, it's helpful with the success that F1's having in the States, because I think it's bringing a lot more people also to IndyCar, and they see what the value is there ticket-wise and what they get for it. I think, IndyCar is going to be a big beneficiary of that, and, it's great to see. They do a heck of a job in regards to what they do, and it's awesome. I mean, especially since Penske took it over, it's just going to go to a whole different level.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell, like Roger Penske, ultimately, he's stayed in motorsport since the 70s or even the 60s. It seems an industry that it's very easy to go bankrupt in. Like, at teams that were on the grid, Formula One or IndyCar, when he started, how many of them are around now? So yeah, absolutely. You would hope he can grow the sport. It's really interesting. We've talked about series. We've talked about cars. We haven't talked about pardon me, we haven't talked about the humans that sit within them. So have you got any favorite drivers, ones that you grew up on, and also in the current era?
Well, in the current era, I mean, you gotta, the one thing that's unfortunate about F1 right now is, I mean, all the people that are in it, they're fantastic drivers. They got there for a reason on their skill. So I mean, Max Verstappen's great. Lewis is, phenomenal driver. But I mean, that's the only unfortunate about F1. I want to say, it's not like a 50-50 split between the car and driver. It's almost an 80-20, almost a 90-10 split between, the car is a majority of it, and your driver, hey, they're lucked out because they got the best car. But I mean, you look at the times on it, you get some of these tracks, I mean, between first and 20th, it could be only a second and a half. I mean, if you take a stopwatch and do a second and a half, and you're like, that's nothing, but in F1, that's forever. It takes it, but, I love Lando Norris. I think he's great. I hope that McLaren, and they can give him the car he needs, or he's going to be off, doing a different team and benefited. I like Fernando Alonso because I love the fact is that he went and explored other series. I love the fact he came to, I wish it would have been awesome if he won the Indy 500 that won his first year. We had this Honda let go. But, and it's fantastic that he's finally, back into a car that seems to be, giving him what he needs with the Aston. I'm a huge Nico Hulkenberg fan. I think it's phenomenal. Again, I love the fact, hey, he raced, won Le Mans, everything like that. So I'm a big Nico Hulkenberg fan. I just, I really respect what he's able to do. And, especially when he substitute for the past few years, man, he jumped right in that car and went bam out of the gate. I mean, he was fast. So I really like, that aspect of it. Now, if you go back in the day, I love Mario Andretti because, and AJ Foyt was fantastic because those guys could drive. I'm a massive Dan Gurney fan. Big respect for Jimmy Clark, Sterling Moss, because back then, those guys drove to survive, to make money, to pay their bills. They would race anything that they got asked to because, they make money here and there. And that's what drove a lot of those guys coming across over here to race the Indy, because the amount of money they could make winning that race. That's what got them over here, because they could win that race. And basically what it would take them almost a whole year to make a amount they could win in one race at the Indy, but they raced everything, from the open wheel single seaters to tin tops. I mean, it was fantastic back in the day what these guys would race. And I just massive amount of respect, and they were successful in all of them. They could race, I don't want to say anything, but pretty much they could race anything. I love John Surtees. I mean, only guy winning, the motorcycle world championship and the F1 championship, that'll never happen again. Massive respect there. I mean, it's phenomenal. Gotta love Phil Hill, America's, first F1 world champion. He's a great guy. I mean, if you want to look something interesting, look up, him and his biography and his background and history. He's a brilliant engineer, but I mean, he was a master restorer of Packards, big Packard guy. But he restored so many cars in that one Pebble Beach. But big respect for him. Great guy, super nice, super humble. But again, jumping in everything, single seaters, racing at Le Mans, everything like that. Big fan of him. So it's never just one. It's always multiple, because each person and each individual had their own, brought something different to the table, and just how they went about business and how they went about racing. I just massive amount of respect for all these guys.
Yeah, and you've really raised an interesting point. Like, all of your answers have been really thought-provoking on this one. It's like, now we're all conditioned to imagine this guy's a single-seater racer, this guy's a sports car guy, this guy's, bikes, etc. But back in the day, as you're saying, and in limited instances now in the modern era, drivers were going across different series. Some weekends, the Formula One race would not be sanctioned by the World Championship, but you still have the Grand Prix. Pardon me. So yeah, the talent. We had Mario Andretti on the podcast, as I like to remind our listeners, and what he described was just.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I do. But
name drop.
Name drop. Yeah, name drop. Boom. What he described, like just sitting in a car, like that is what he was born to do. Controlling a car through a corner, doesn't matter what formula, doesn't matter what setup, he can make it work. His stat that just blows my mind is his first Grand Prix, I think, was 1968. His last was something like 1982.
Yep.
And in both, he was on pole position.
Yep.
That's amazing. And in both, he wasn't racing the full 82 season. I think he was replacing, unfortunately, Didier Pironi, who had the accident.
Yeah.
And in 68, I think he was coming in for the US Grand Prix. So he's just like an insanely fast guy, but fast in everything. Like, that is a talent.
Well, he won the Daytona 500. He won the F1 World Championship. He won the IndyCar Championship. I mean, the guys won the 12-hour Sebring. I mean, he's, the only thing he never won was 24-hour Le Mans. I mean, just what he could do. And, he's at the forefront, I guess, say worldwide, just because of the fact of, his F1 connection. But, AJ Foyt, was right there with them in regards to talent wise and driving anything and everything. Open wheel, NASCAR, he won Le Mans, and he's 12-hour Sebring, IndyCar championship, won the Indy 500 4 times. What those guys brought to the table is just back then was phenomenal. And they, it was great. They had that freedom, to do that and jump around in those different type of cars and just, having that massive amount of talent, and it's great seeing Mario, what he does that, he's still involved massively. He does those, the ride alongs, it's great to see, I hope, these morons, these team principals in F1 let Andretti have a team, because I think that would, if Andretti had a team and F1 finally got there, then I would think the sustainability for having F1 maintain the 3 races here in the States would just be tenfold. That would do so much for the sport here, having an American team and having the Andretti name behind it. I mean, obviously, Liberty's behind it. They want to do it, but, I think they're creating these roadblocks for them to, for Michael to have this team just financially wise, dollar wise, because, these team principals, they're greedy. And you can't fault them for it. Hey, this is a business. It's not something they're doing as a hobby. But, I think they're really missing the boat and not really understanding what that name would bring to the table if they had a Formula One team owned by Andretti.
No, you're right. And it does feel like they're putting blocks in place. Andretti sort of came along. I think they were originally going to have the Renault engine. They had everything that a new team required. And then they sort of just were given the cold shoulder by Formula One. Interestingly, the FIA, who are the sports governing body, Mohammed bin Sulayem, who I think is still the president, but was told to go home and hasn't really been seen for a while. He criticised Formula One and the teams for saying, why wouldn't you want the Andretti name in Formula One? And Andretti came back. They had the Cadillac deals for a huge supplier, a huge manufacturer behind them. Like, what are they? What box are they not ticking? And then you think that, we were talking to Mario, and obviously it's Michael that would kind of run the organization, but he was saying, which drivers would we pick? Well, we'd be looking at Colton Herta. Yep. An American driver in an American manufacturer or American car would be incredible, And as you say, that's the sustainability of the sport. People would start getting behind it. It would just add to the brand. So hopefully they can get him.
Yeah, immensely. I mean, to your point, they thought they had the deal for, we'll call it Sauber, but then they, all of a sudden the price was just obscene. And then, okay, it starts 250 million to extension. Okay, bam, they have it. Well, I actually know what, it's 500 million now. They would meet the requirements, and then all of a sudden they just, all right, let's make it higher than that. Let's give them another roadblock. And to your point, what's his name? Putting him on gardening leave, and because of his comments. And it's unfortunate. It's just I don't think they're seeing the big picture. I think they're just looking at the bottom line, and in the grand scheme of things, it might reduce their revenue per team a little bit, but it's not like it's going to cut it in half. It's unfortunate. And especially, and to your point, like them bringing in GM, having Cadillac involved, having the, as the engine, even if it's just, Cosworth or someone building it, for argument's sake, and just branding it as a Cadillac, so be it. But having that name recognition behind it, Andretti, Cadillac, in Formula One, I mean, come on. How do you not let them in?
Yeah, it would be incredible. I'm sort of salivating as we can hear that engine, just Michael Andretti on the, on the pit wall coming for interviews. The extra two, the extra 2 seats in the sport. The big problem in Formula One at the moment, and it's actually why you're seeing a lot of talent going over to IndyCar, is that there's only 20 seats. So if each year you have Formula 2, you've got the champion, it's a close run thing. You might have 2 or 3 other guys that are, at least good enough to compete. There just aren't enough seats to keep all that talent. So another, an 11th team. Back in the day, you'd have 26 places on the grid and extra teams trying to qualify. So, yeah, I guess when you look at sustainability of Formula One, it's about like the competition. And you're right, maybe you don't want to go from a 10% profit share to a 9% profit share, but it's about how big is the pie? Can we make it bigger for longer? Yeah. So there we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's ways they can do it. They just got to really kind of, put pencil to paper and get it all sorted out and do it. And, it's, yeah, and it helps. I mean, obviously it's only two more seats, but, hey, it brings in Colton Herta. I mean, it's fantastic. Logan Sargent's on the grid. I mean, I hope,
Mm,
he can prove himself and stay there. But there's so much talent, in F2, and, coming up, there's just, they don't get the opportunity to do it, and they come in as a reserve driver and do simulator testing, and they get like 3 days out of the whole year. They run on a Friday, for, an hour.
mm,
I mean, it's not really doing much. And to your point, they come over to IndyCar because, one, they don't have to bring $20 million to the table. They bring 500,000 or $1 million to the table sponsorship. That'll get you a seat. And you're racing. And what's funny is, yeah, the technology's not as at the level of F1, but they get in those cars. Hey, they got a ton of power, ton of grip, but they're heavy. You can throw them around, and they're not delicate little flowers, and they end up
mm.
loving it, and it's fantastic racing. And so it's IndyCar is the benefit of it. So it's good to see.
No, absolutely. And I love watching IndyCar. We had the St. Pete Grand Prix as the season opener. The wheel to wheel action, literally at times wheel to wheel. Sometimes it's spilt over and there are people in the barriers, but it was safe, which is, a good thing now, touch wood. But, it's committed racing. And as you say, even if it's sort of 80-20 car, even if it's that in IndyCar, well, all the cars are the same other than the engine. So, that 80 is then nullified, and you've just got the drivers and their sheer will to win with a bit of strategy on the side. So it's definitely much more interesting, and where I'll be focusing this season. So tell us, William, because we don't want to keep you for too much longer, but
It's
I'd
all
love
right.
to kind of delve into the kind of intellectual property of everyone we have on the show. And I love the conversation we've had about motorsport and how to make Formula One successful in America. But you are a successful entrepreneur, as well as the kind of custodian of a charity. But it comes down to being in the automotive marketplace. What would your tips be for people coming up in the industry? I appreciate it's a competitive industry. You don't want to give away your secrets. But yeah, what are the kind of principles you stick by, or some of those kind of things that you do that make you successful?
The key thing is, is that old adage, do unto others as you do unto yourself, whatever. Um,
Mm,
treat your, go above and beyond, and just, treat your clients, as you'd want to be treated, and, treat them correctly. Don't put the dollar ahead of your reputation. And, just because you want to make an extra $500 or extra $5,000 or something like that, it's like, look at the big picture. It's not worth it. I would
mm,
much rather take a haircut, so to speak, on, a commission, or, getting paid on, helping, doing, facilitating a transaction or whatever, knowing the fact is that I will get multiple transactions down the road from that person because of the way I've treated them. But also the fact is, you got to look at that person. It's a very tight knit community, especially you start getting into the upper echelons of these cars and their values. They all know each other, and especially getting brand specific, and especially like with Ferrari, it's a very
mm,
tight knit family and community of these guys that, have and own these cars and drive them. They all know each other. They are aware of each other, and they're going to tell their people, they're going to tell their friends and tell them that, hey, you want to talk with William. He's the one, hey, he's going to treat you correctly. He's not going to shortchange you. He's not going to, do anything shady. You want to deal with him. Always treat your clients and anyone you deal with, just period, treat them with the respect that you'd want in return. I mean, it's very simple. It baffles me when I hear these stories of how, these people, these individuals, they'll put money above reputation and doing something correctly. They'd rather piss away many more deals with that person and other people they know for an couple extra dollars, and then instead of doing it correctly and just, hey, I'll worry about it down the road. They put money ahead of reputation and how they should deal with someone. I mean, plain and simple, just be above board, treat people correctly, and do what you're supposed to do. Go above and beyond. And it's simple to do. And but there's so many people in this industry that don't. They're just greedy. And it baffles me
Mm.
that they would rather ruin their reputation and ruin the opportunity down the road for other potential sales and transactions for over a couple dollars. It baffles me constantly how people and why they do that. I just don't understand it.
Well, I guess the two silver linings are: one, it must be harder it must be harder to maintain those principles, those ethics, and therefore it suggests you are a particularly ethical and values driven person. So that's the first. The second thing is, if everyone else was that dedicated to their clients, the world would be a lot more competitive. So
True.
maybe there's a silver lining.
That
Exactly.
you're true in that. Here's the one thing too, though, is I deal with a very small group of other people that do what I do, and they basically have the same ethics that I do, and we do everything
Mm.
correctly. So we're fortunate. The fact is, we're not greedy. We're not trying to cut the other person out, go behind their back. We can trust each other because we all benefit. So I deal with a very, very small amount of people in what I do. And, we get along. We're not trying to, I want to say be competitive with one another, trying to steal deals from people and stuff like that. That's not what we do. It's not the way to go about it. And you find that group of people to work with like that, you'll be happy, you'll make a decent living, and you'll have a lot of fun in life and get to partake and drive and enjoy fantastic cars. And it's a very simple way to go about it, but a lot of people just choose not to for whatever reason there is. I don't know why.
No, well, we'll take that mantra. Do unto others as you would have done to you, and also go see the big picture, go above and beyond for your clients. Let me ask you a
Yeah.
question about the marketplace. And Denz has supplied me this question because he is a high roller. He's got an AMG. He's enjoying himself. I don't know where he gets the money from, but that's the question for him and his accountant. But if we could buy any car that would perhaps be a good investment today, what would you recommend for us to buy?
Well, it obviously depends on what kind of money you got. I it obviously you go for stuff that's limited production, stuff that's rare. Um, I always tell people though, don't ever go into if you have the mindset that I'm buying this car as an investment because I'm going to resell it down the road and try and make money on it, you're going to disappoint yourself 9 out of 10 times.
Mm,
You buy a car for the passion and the love for that car, and either want it as a kid, or hey, you're financially viable enough now to spend a couple $100,000 on the car or more. But I mean, if you're going to look at it from an investment standpoint, I mean, you can't go wrong with any Enzo era stuff, but then you can't go wrong with these cars that are building only like 50 of them or 100 of them. A lot of speculators do that, and they're fortunate. Hey, they'll make money at it, but it's a very high ticket price to get into that. And this day and age, you have to have that affiliation with that manufacturer. You'd had to have multiple cars from that brand. You got to be, they have to know who you are to be able to have the opportunity to buy those cars that you could buy them and sit on it for 6 months or a year and then flip them for twice as what you paid for it. And
mm,
these manufacturers are starting to kind of make it more difficult for these people to resell the cars so quickly or to flip them. But still it's, you have to be in that position. But I always, if someone comes and say, hey, I want to buy a car because I want to, in 2 years, I want to be able to double my money. I'm like, I can't predict that. You don't know what the market's going to do. Buy something,
yeah.
buy something that you're passionate about, something that you love, and you take care of that car and you enjoy it. You treat it correctly. Yeah. Hey,
Mm.
a couple of years, you go sell it. Yeah, you should be able to make a few dollars. But I mean, you can't have that mindset that I'm going to go buy a car and that's going to make me money down the road. I mean, you don't have no idea where the market's going to go and what, what a car is going to do. I mean, if I was able to predict that, I'd be a billionaire.
Hey, who knows? Maybe you are. I'll talk to your accountant. Maybe you and Denz have the same guy. I don't know. But there we are. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And the 200% point. I mean, maybe we're going to have some more hyperinflation. So it might be we double our money, but not our value. Let's see.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
like what's going on in the market right now, you have a lot of stuff that's, I want to say overpriced, but, for the longest time, people were getting top dollar for things. And, so,
mm,
but it's kind of calmed down. So, but people still think they can get some certain values for these cars and they're not. So these cars are just sitting there, not selling because they've got this insane price on them. And
mm.
all these online auction sites, and you can go through and see history and stuff. And someone thinks, well, that's almost my same exact car. So for that, I should be able to get that. Well, no, your car's missing a headlight and it's got holes in the floor and stuff like that. It's giving people unrealistic expectations of what the value of the car is.
Yeah, and I guess the closest thing I have to it, in my experience, is sort of property, and I think each transaction is unique, right? It's two parties. Um, on the day that the other car sold, it might be that someone, a particular person came around and they made a particular decision, and maybe that buyer is unique. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
something's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
yeah,
And any one day could be worth X, next day could be worth Y. It all depends on what someone's willing to pay and what someone's willing to sell it for. In any transaction, you want both sides to feel good about it. You want the seller to be happy with what they got for the car, and you want the buyer to be happy with what they paid for the car. Last thing you want to do is someone walk away, oh, I overpaid for that car. And it's like, well, then why'd you buy it? But, or a seller saying, oh God, I got robbed blind, selling that, that's not what you want, because then you have an unhappy client, and,
mm.
it's trying to make both sides happy. You want the seller, to get the most money, but you want the buyer to buy it, the best, cheapest price possible. So, I mean, you got two combating things there, but hey, you find that happy medium and both sides are happy.
No, absolutely. I hadn't thought about that. We've talked about marketplace. You're literally in the middle, bringing two clients together. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
it's like, I'm a
yeah,
mediator.
yeah. You're a mediator, but it's hopefully in more positive times than when we normally hear the word mediator. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So here's a question. Final sort of serious question. You talked a bit before about kind of the electric cars, how perhaps you put a blindfold on and they might feel all the same, they might sound all the same. Where do you see the automotive industry and the marketplace going, and including within that, because we've been talking about classic cars really as well. Like, surely that market will get stronger over time if we're not producing as many conventional petrol cars in the future. Where do you see it going?
Well, governments are putting the cart before the horse in regards to pushing, I mean, over there for you guys in the UK, I mean, they're really aggressive about it in regards to, no more, was it 2030 that the UK is,
2030,
yeah, banning the sale of, ICE engines. Over here, you're starting to see it in some of the, more major cities, like, out in California, they're going to, I think it's 2035. But it's unfortunate because the infrastructure is not there for it. It cannot support it, and I don't think people are educated enough in regards to the amount of, I'd say pollution or whatnots that, goes into creating those electric cars, and more specifically the battery itself. But I mean, we're getting forced into buying these cars because the government's kind of mandating it. And I think it has to do with a lot of people with a lot of money, i.e. these car manufacturers, hey, we're getting to it, so we're going to just push this down everybody's throat. But look at, and the price of those cars are obscene. So I think the classic car side of things, and when you start talking classic cars, you're talking cars, 80s, 90s, early 2000. I mean, those are going to be classic cars here very, very soon, if not already. And I absolutely love what Porsche is doing, but there's a couple other companies out there doing is creating that basically zero emission fuel. You see what Porsche is doing, and what was it? Sebastian Vettel, ran the famous, fabulous red number 5 on, that fuel. You see it a lot more. So I'm hoping that it goes to the way is say, look, there's 7 billion people in this world. and there's God knows how many hundreds of millions of vehicles on the road, and majority of well, right now, 99% of them are all gas powered cars. They're not going anywhere. Not everybody in this world can afford $100,000 electric car. Not a lot of people can afford a $30,000 electric car. It's the internal combustion engine is not going anywhere. It's going to be around for at least another, easily manufactured from new for at least another, I would say 30 to 40 years easily. It's just the way it is. It's going to have to be that way because people can't afford anything else. And, they come up with these alternative fuels that are zero emissions. Like, well, it's cheaper and more cost effective to build an internal combustion engine. It's not taking the raw materials that it takes to build these batteries, that are, you want to talk a finite amount of that type of material. Look what goes in those batteries. I mean, especially where you got to get them from, so I have a feeling that, obviously electric car will start playing a major role, but I don't see it overtaking the internal combustion engine for a long time. I just don't see it happening. Obviously, because you got to have the financial wherewithal to purchase it, but, then to put the charging station in your house and, the charging infrastructure is not there. And I know you guys deal with it over the UK, but like over here, you go to these charging stations, half of them don't work. The other half that are working are super slow, or they're all occupied and you're 3 deep. And who wants to sit there for 3, 4, 5 hours waiting to charge your car when your internal combustion engine, you whip up to a gas station that's on every corner, basically 5 minutes, you're filled up, you're good to go for another 400 or 500 miles. It's going to take a long, long time. And I don't see the electric car overtaking the internal combustion engine car for many, many, many years. I mean, I just don't see it happening. And I just don't see it. I think this biofuel, or whatever you want to call it, that they're developing, I foresee it really playing a major role where all of a sudden everyone's going to be like, well, wait a minute. We can still build these engines, still have what they are, and we got gas, fuel to put in it that's zero emission, or basically next to zero. Hey, and what they're using to manufacture it is helping the planet because they're using cast off stuff that wouldn't get used otherwise. So, I mean, it's, the benefit of it is unbelievable. So the next 20, 25 years are going to be very, very interesting in the automotive industry to see what go. Because I think there's going to be some backtracking on these manufacturers and governments in regards to trying to push these electric cars down everyone's throat. I mean, in London, out in Los Angeles, New York City, these very dense, highly, high cities where you got just all these people that live in a very small square footprint. Yeah, it makes sense because all that emission coming out. But everywhere else, I mean, why are you pushing it down my throat? I don't get it. But it's going to be interesting next 20, 25 years to see where everything goes. That's for sure.
Well, we started talking about your 20 plus years in the automotive marketplace, and maybe, clearly you want to play a bit more golf and go on some tours, but maybe you've got another 20 plus years in the automotive marketplace and you can tell us how it goes. It's really interesting, actually. We had Ed Foster on the show. He is the compere for the Goodwood Festival of Speed. So he does all the interviews at the bottom of the hill. He does all the sort of media production. He's from Motorsport Media. And he was suggesting that other than, the things you talked about, where it's like, where do you source the cobalt and other sort of inputs to make the batteries and so on, the two things he pointed out was when particularly in racing, but just in normal life as well, when a tank is full, it's heavy, and when a tank is empty, it's light. So you get that advantage as things get lighter. Whereas with a battery, that doesn't change. And the second thing he said, which was really interesting, the second thing he said was really interesting to me was where do they put the batteries when they're, like on your phone, where your battery, when you've got an old phone, the battery gets weaker and weaker and it just sort of runs out of charge really quickly. Where do we put all these batteries when they're done? So that'll be an interesting challenge. I'm sure the automotive sector will have to consider, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you're not going to put them in a landfill. I mean, and you can't, take them apart and utilize it for something else. I mean, it's like once they're done, they're done. I mean, I'm sure someone brilliant, someone smart will figure something out and make a ton of money off it. But like right now, where are they going to go? I mean, we have enough problems ecologically, with what we dispose of on a daily basis worldwide as it is now. Now we're adding these contaminants to the picture. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be sorted, and again, they're rushing into this.
Okay, so we're back from our commercial break, which was definitely not enforced by a Wi-Fi failure in Sri Lanka, and I'm here to ask the key question, and if you're at home, you'll know what I'm about to ask. So, I mean, I'll set it up. William, look, come on, we all love pizzas, don't we? You love a good pizza?
Of course.
Okay, so there we go. Right, you're in the 99% of people that like pizza. So now, here's the question. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Aha. Very, very kind of deliberate. You're like, yes, straight in.
Yeah.
What gives you the confidence on that?
It tastes great. I mean, obviously, it's got to have the other accoutrements going with it, to have that flavor. But it's that kind of sweet hot type situation. I think it's now. Do I order it? Not often. I usually order one that's loaded up with a lot of meat and everything like that on it, and a lot of veggies. But no, I think it's fantastic. A good Hawaiian pizza. Oh, it's fabulous.
Okay, another one for the pineapple column, and Georgie will be happy as our kind of the queen of the pineapples. Yeah, fantastic. So, William, before we kind of conclude, tell people where they can find you, and is there anything you want to leave our listeners with? Any message or anything you want to say?
Obviously, you can. I've started, partnering up with some guys, and we're really going to kind of expand, our media. I don't want to say empire, but we're kind of joining forces, and we're really going to expand. So if you want to check out our whole thing, you can go to the exoticmarketplace.com, and you'll start seeing where we're taking the Ferrari marketplace, the Porsche marketplace, and expanding that with Alfa, Mercedes, and some other brands. But then we're also bringing in a print. Well, it used to be a print magazine, but now it's online. It's Garage Style Magazine. But we're also getting on the side of the parts stuff. We're going to expand our podcasting, our video content with YouTube and that. So we're really going to start delving in it and getting out. So I mean, if you want to follow along and see some of the great stuff we got coming down the pipe, definitely check it out. But the one big thing, also is take a look at FeuerbachPorsche.com. It's going to be some exciting stuff. We should have a big announcement coming around June, with kind of basically putting everything out there on the table with what we're going to do and what we got worked up. It's going to be really exciting stuff, and it's going to really excite a lot of people on the Porsche side of things. I mean, it's going to open up some eyes. So it's going to be a lot of fun there. So take a look at that. And hey, you can reach out to me, and my email address is on my LinkedIn page. If you want to reach me, just William@theferrarimarketplace.com. Shoot to me and shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I respond to pretty much everybody unless you're asking a stupid question. I have no problems there. But kind of that edge is go back to what we talked about before. It's not just in business, but in life. Just do unto others, they have to do unto you. I mean, treat everybody nice, treat them with respect. And respect everyone else's opinion, even if they don't, match yours. That's what's great about, individuality and being on this marble we all live on. Everyone's got their own ideas, opinions and how they go about life. Hey, respect it. It doesn't match up with yours. Who cares? That's, it makes them unique, respect it. And, like you said, Blag, is, I love learning new things. I love, learning new stuff from, different people and what their lives are and how they go about things and who they know. And, I read as much as I can possibly can and just to learn. I mean, knowledge is king, just go about your life and respect other people, and respect how they go about their lives. And I think people would have a lot more happier lives if we went about living that way.
Well, absolutely. And, I'm feeling the respect, but I'm also feeling beyond that, the generosity. And I'm really grateful for your time. And yeah, June, I'm excited about June. You really know how you should be an announcer on like WWE or something, what's happening in June? Is it SummerSlam? Like what? I can't wait. I also can't wait for you to drive across the US with the grandfather of the founder of Porsche. So, you've got a lot coming up, and we look forward. We're excited to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said there's going to be, like I said, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up, and it's going to be a very exciting year, and looking forward to it. And like I said before, and I'm always wanting to let other people join in on the fun, so to speak. I'm lucky in life. I'm afforded these opportunities, and I'm all about sharing and letting other people participate and enjoying it. Because I'm just very fortunate, and I'm always willing to help other people out. So, and like I said, reach out to me if anyone's got questions. And, I have no problem, helping, the younger, that's trying to break into the business, what to do. And, any advice, I'm more than happy to tell them give them some advice, tell them what they could go about doing. And, it's, there's plenty to go around. It's not like this is a small thing where we're keeping everybody out. There's so many different aspects and avenues you can get into the automotive industry, and, enjoy yourself and enjoy your passion and earn your living in this fantastic market.
Well, thank you, William. And the phrase I want to use with you is every success in the future. I wish you well, and we'd love to have you back to hear about your secret announcement in June. On the subject of success, friend of the show, and William, you're going to laugh again because third name drop. We had Miles Rowe on the show last year. He's moved up to the USF Pro 2000 series this season. So that's the one below Indy NXT, used to be called Indy Lights.
Yep.
And he's now on a 3-race winning streak. So that's a third place and 3 wins. He's now leading the championship by something like 28 points. So huge congrats to Miles. The other thing that I should let listeners know about is that I hope this podcast is going to go out on Saturday. And then the following week, so on the Monday, we'll have the cookout for the Australian Grand Prix. The Tuesday, we are going to have Sabra Cook on YouTube Live with Dens. And if you don't know Sabra Cook, you've been living under a rock, but she was the first US participant in the W Series. She's racing Porsche Carreras this season, had an exciting shootout at the end of last season to get that ride. So we want to hear how she's doing. I hear she's doing extremely well. So that's what we've got coming up. So until next time, thank you so much for sticking with us through the podcast. Thanks again to William, and we'll see you soon. Good night.